Hey guys, and welcome back. Today we're in Singapore. We didn't do anything super crazy here because this was mostly just a home base for us to leave extra baggage. We also visited our relatives, and we have a lot of them. There were family lunches and dinners left and right.
Before we start, it'll be good to know that we actually visited Singapore 5 times over our trip. After Vietnam, Bali, Japan, Cambodia, and Thailand. We were using our grandma's condo as our home base. We could leave unnecessary items at her place when we left for another country. For Singapore, our grandma's condo was pretty big. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, living, and dining room, 2 bathrooms, and a soda room, which we slept in. It used to be a mahjong room before we kicked the table out and covered the floor with mattresses. Sleeping on the floor wasn't all that bad, although the air conditioner kept making these really annoying sounds every few seconds, which really made it hard to sleep. Our grandma's condo was a 5-minute walk from Singapore's second largest mall, Nex. That's pretty convenient because we can just go shopping and eating there. What's even more convenient, however, is the fact that a subway station was built under it. Not 1, but 2. It's an underground interchange for the Circle and Northeast lines. Not only that, but one of those 2 lines leads directly to the largest mall in Singapore, Vivo City. I mean, the other one does too, but it's a longer route. So that pretty much made Nex irrelevant, since Vivo was about 15 minutes away and there's a lot more to do there. Singapore's subway system is really dense. It's actually called the MRT, and the underground and overground network of tracks is pretty complex, almost a bit redundant for such a small country. When I was like 5, I used to ride the MRT with my grandma for no apparent reason. I don't know why, but I liked it. And still do. So now, if we ever get bored, I could just say we could go to Vivo City to grab some lunch, then take the long route and arrive in time for dinner. We didn't do too much tourist stuff in Singapore, mainly just hung out with family. Although, we did go to the Art Science Museum, which is part of the Marina Bay Sands Resort. The Marina Bay Sands consists of a mall, the museum, the hotel towers, and of course, a casino. The entire property costs around $6 billion to build and opened around 8 years ago. But we never went inside the hotel itself, just the museum.
The Art Science Museum is one of those modern museums that are more engaging, thank goodness. I'm usually not one for museums that are just reading and looking at pictures. Our first destination was the Strandbeests exhibit. I'll just give you a quick rundown of what those are. A Dutch sculptor by the name of Theo Jansen invented wind-powered machines called Strandbeests, also known as windwalkers or beach animals. They were created to address the issue of flooding by rising sea levels. Strandbeests are mostly made out of ordinary materials like plastic bottles, piping, and zip ties. Once they're deployed on the beach, the windwalkers, like their name suggests, use the wind to power them, walking with their varying number of feet. As they skitter along the beach, they slowly pile sand to form a natural barrier. It is seriously so cool. Different types of beach animals have their own species and Latin names as well as different time periods. After that, we went to the next place, called Future World, where art meets science. Almost everything was interactive and really awesome. There were different sections with totally different designs, almost like chapters. Then came the finale. Space, containing the crystal universe, was a large room lined with mirrors and filled to the brim with synchronized LED strips hanging from the ceiling. They're supposed to give the illusion of being in the center of the universe, surrounded by stars. I could space out for hours just staring at the lights. To my great disappointment, you actually aren't supposed to sit on the floor and spend the whole day staring at flashing lights, so we left the museum and headed back. I would highly recommend a visit here. It's very fun.
We spent 10 days in Singapore after our 2 weeks in Vietnam, visiting family and all that stuff before taking off for Bali. It was with Singapore Airlines business class on a 787, in case you were curious, although you probably weren't anyway, but... Yeah, it looked like EVA's 777 cabin, although the seats didn't lie flat completely.
Now I know you might be thinking, oh, why didn't you guys do a video in Bali? To answer the question that you didn't ask was because all we did was A, hang out in the hotel, and B, surf. Actually, that's not entirely true because we did go to a zoo, but other than that, all we did was hang out in the hotel and surf. And that would make for a really short episode, so we're just going to talk about it for a bit in here. Our dad signed us up for surfing classes, about 3 hours per day. Xander and I had a teacher each, Tiki and Yogi. They were really friendly and amazing teachers. As a bonus, a turtle group, I think it's called the Bali Sea Turtle Society, was releasing these adorable olive Ridley turtles during our classes. As we were paddling around and surfing, the occasional baby would dip up for air and swim right past us. After a few days of practice, I would say we got pretty good. We're still beginners, of course, but better. I also discovered that doing handstands on your surfboard is quite fun. And that was basically all we did in Bali.
We flew the same plane back to Singapore, and we had 5 days to reconfigure our suitcases for the cooler climates of Mongolia, Japan, and China. In the meantime, trains and visiting family. Before we left for Japan, however, I just so happened to get food poisoning, so it was a repeat of Vietnam, except it lasted for longer than 2 days. We were going to have a big lunch with family and friends that day, and I really couldn't eat anything but porridge, so that sucked. What else sucked was the fact that we were leaving for Japan the next day. But that didn't really matter since we weren't in Singapore anymore, and thus it isn't relevant to this video. After we finished the long 2-month part of the trip, however, we finally arrived back in Singapore. Once again, we had 5 days before we needed to scram for Cambodia. What did we do during that time? Mostly train riding and visiting family. However, we did visit a hydroponics farm, which was pretty cool. Although we don't have too many videos or photos of it, so I'll just tell you this. It's pretty much just a farm.
During our stay here, I discovered this store that I absolutely fell in love with, Miniso. It's almost like a tiny Target, but 10 times cuter. I know they have these in America, but they're Asia-based, and I've never seen them before. The things they sell here are pretty high quality too. They don't fall apart on day 2. This isn't a huge deal, but I just wanted to throw this in.
Now after Cambodia, we would be spending about 20 days relaxing in Singapore while our dad went back to the States and switched spots with our older brother. So we booked a nice hotel in Sentosa and spent a week there. It was a really nice location since there was a little monorail station just across the road. It took us to Vivo City, which is across the waterway, which in turn gave us access to Harbourfront MRT station, which in turn gave us access to the entire island. However, we spent most of the days either in our hotel, eating at Vivo, or out exploring Sentosa.
Our stay here was like a vacation inside a vacation, so we mainly chilled, swam in the pretty pool, and explored. Zach brought his gimbal, so we filmed a few fun stuff on that. One evening, Zach, Xander, and I set off to meet Mom and some of her friends to watch a show. The show was called Wings of Time, using lasers, water, and fire to make some cool effects. They looked pretty high budget, and I did like it quite a bit, but the story was...
Now that sounds like an adventure. Can I come along?
Oh, Rachel!
targeted towards younger kids. It was pretty late when the show finished, so we headed back to the hotel. I swear, that was basically all we did. My mom is an avid art and museum lover, so she slapped duct tape over our protests and dragged us along with her. Sometime later, I found out that we were going to a minimalist museum, and that piqued my interest. I'm just going to touch on some of the more interesting ones and skim through the rest. Okay, first up is the Bridge of Embers. I don't quite remember the names of the exhibits, so this is just going to be me trying to figure out what they are via the internet. It's a walkway with mirrors at the bottom to make it seem like you're walking over an endless abyss. I'm kind of grouping up the next ones into one category, the mirror cubes. This museum has a lot of cubey things, including this really cool hanging barbed wire cube called Impenetrable. There are also lots of light installations, like a lot. The next few are Megadeth, Horizontal Depth, This Is Not the Place We Go to Die. Oh wait, this one is actually interesting. It's made of Vantablack, the blackest black in the world, and I read that they had to work with NASA to have it commissioned. Also, why are all these names so angsty? Anyway, there's a room for one color, that's one of my favorites. If you thought that was cool, hold on to your butts, because we saved the best for last. Gravel, wood chips, melted blob of wax, white rectangle. All in all, the museum was quite enjoyable, despite some of the more questionable pieces of art.
After Thailand, we had 5 days to kill before we had to leave for the States. We decided to spend most of the days out and about since we had less than a week here. Although we spent most of it visiting family, I actually blew a few hours just riding trains around. By myself. Because no one in their right mind would sit in a train for no reason. Well, we also went to the Marina Barrage, which is basically a long dam. It was built in late 2008 and managed to do 3 things at once. It could control water levels during storms and floods, it provided a water supply, and it was also a park. Sorta. Along with the barrage, we took a look at Henderson Waves. It's just a bridge. I mean a cool bridge, but just a bridge.
Henderson Waves is the tallest pedestrian bridge in Singapore at 36 meters high. It's one of the prettiest bridges I've ever seen and walked on. I mean, not that I've walked on that many. Its name comes from the wavy pattern the bridge has. There are ribbed alcoves along the bridge, allowing for people to sit and enjoy the view. It's most crowded at nighttime, and for good reason too. LED lights illuminate the waves every night, allowing for a beautiful, peaceful stroll. Of course, since it was so dark, the only thing our iPhone cameras could capture was black fuzz. This location is actually featured in the Singapore Airlines safety video, which, might I add, is one of my favorite safety videos because of how well produced it is.
Well, all good things must come to an end, and the day finally came to leave Asia. Our flight back to the States was almost identical to the one we took coming to Asia, except reversed. Same airline, same plane, same good food, and same lie-flat seats. 4 hours to Taipei, 3-hour layover, then the last leg of the trip across the Pacific. As we departed Taipei, I realized, oh wait a minute, this is the last business class flight I'd be taking for a long time. Better enjoy every second of it. And enjoy it I did. After a few hours of staying awake and watching the sunset, I finally decided to kick back my seat all the way and take a nice nap in the big metal tube cruising 700 miles an hour, 30,000 feet in the air. After almost 5 months away from home, we finally returned to America in the middle of the government shutdown. Despite that, we cleared immigration relatively quickly and had no problems at all with security. It was dark, about 10 p.m. by the time we touched down, and it was cold. Cold and dry. It was good to be back with the depressing gray skies, the dog, and my video games.
And that wraps up the 5 months we had in Asia. We definitely learned a lot, and I enjoyed our trip.
So now we have nothing else to do. I mean, we could just go on another 5-month trip, but no. Anyways, see y'all later.
Bye.
Can anybody guess what this installation is called? You don't have to guess because I have to answer. It is a lamp going on and off.